What if the greatest betrayal isn't from an enemy, but from the one who promised to build a life with you? For Elijah, a man who lived by blueprints and precise angles, the moment his world fractured wasn't with a violent blow, but with a quiet, devastating realization. The woman he trusted with his entire existence wasn't simply leaving their shared construction. She was actively dismantling it. And he, the architect, was about to become the victim of her design. Elijah Vance was a man who found solace in order. In Austin, Texas, he was known as the architect who could breathe life back into forgotten buildings. His passion wasn't merely construction, it was restoration, honoring the past while securing the future. He meticulously studied faded plans, reinforced crumbling walls, and envisioned the enduring beauty of what was once broken. This dedication wasn't just professional, it was personal. In his younger years, a critical design flaw in a complex university project, a moment of youthful oversight, had led to a spectacular, albeit non-fatal, structural failure. That failure forged his unwavering commitment to precision and integrity, a quiet vow that nothing he built, professionally or personally, would ever collapse due to his own negligence. He met Serafina Thorne at a vibrant gallery opening, her slender fingers delicately brushing the surface of a Renaissance portrait she had brought back from near ruin. She spoke of layers, of revealing the true work beneath centuries of decay. And Elijah saw his own philosophy reflected in her art. Their connection was instant, built on shared values of beauty, precision, and the reverence for history. He, the architect of tangible forms, she, the restorer of visual legacies. They were two halves of a perfectly constructed whole. Their marriage became a testament to their shared aesthetic. Their home, a meticulously designed space of clean lines and warm textures, felt like a sanctuary. It was filled with quiet mornings over coffee and architectural sketches, evenings spent discussing art, books, and the dreams they were carefully building together. Their love was expressed not in grand gestures, but in the subtle comfort of shared silence, the unspoken understanding that flowed between two souls deeply aligned. Every beam, every brushstroke, every shared laugh seemed to add another layer of permanence to their bond. But then, the subtle shifts began. Serafina, usually so focused, would sometimes stare blankly at her own work, her eyes holding a distant, almost detached quality. Her late nights at the studio grew more frequent, explained away by a demanding new commission or a particularly intricate restoration project. Her once unwavering gaze would flicker away when he asked simple questions about her day. A new artistic movement, she claimed, had consumed her focus, a radical conceptual style far removed from the classicism she adored. Elijah, ever the rationalist, searched for logical explanations, for a blueprint to understand this growing distance. Yet the feeling persisted. An almost imperceptible veil had descended, and beneath it, a secret was guarded, a new, unsettling design being drawn. Elijah, a man who could see structural flaws in centuries-old buildings, was blind to the fault lines appearing in the very foundation of his own life. The cracks were forming, but the true architect of their collapse was still hidden in plain sight. Serafina's world, meticulously organized by the brushes and solvents of her restoration studio, began to intersect with a disruptive force. Valeria Val Cruz. Val wasn't about restoring the past, she was about detonating the present. Her digital art installations pulsed with raw energy, her conceptual sculptures defied convention. Val was a jolt of electricity to Serafina's carefully calibrated existence, bold, unapologetically loud, and offering a dizzying sense of liberation Serafina hadn't known she craved. Val was everything Serafina wasn't, and precisely what she secretly desired. The affair began subtly, a shared glass of wine after a collaborative art event. lingering conversations that stretched into the late hours. Then, a touch, a gaze held too long, and Serafina found herself willingly stepping across a boundary she'd sworn she would never cross. This wasn't the quiet, thoughtful love she shared with Elijah. This was intoxicating, illicit, a feeling of true freedom she'd only dreamed of. She was torn between the security of her constructed life and the volatile thrill of this new, consuming passion. With every stolen moment, she felt herself pulled deeper into Val's magnetic field. Elijah, the observer, began to notice, not through suspicion, but through his architect's eye for detail. Serafina's phone was always face down, its screen dark, its secrets guarded. Hushed conversations would abruptly cease when he entered a room. Her once predictable schedule became a series of unexplained absences. A new vibrancy, almost a frenetic energy sparked in her eyes, but it never seemed directed at him. He saw it when she described Val's latest art piece, when she returned from her supposed long nights at the studio. Elijah, logical to his core, sought explanations, dismissing his gut feelings as unfounded anxiety. He constructed scenarios, rationalizing away the mounting evidence, yet the unsettling feeling grew, a subtle vibration through the very floorboards of his home. The tension became a tangible thing, a heavy silence that pressed in on their meticulously designed home. One evening, Elijah, a man of direct communication, attempted to address the growing unease. He watched Serafina as she scrolled absently through her phone, a small, unreadable smile on her face. "Is everything all right, Sarah?" he asked, his voice calm, measured. She started, dropping her phone, her eyes flicking up to his, then away. "What's wrong, Elijah?" "You've been different," he pressed gently. "You've been different, Serafina. There's a distance, a new kind of quiet." She laughed then, a sharp, unfamiliar sound that cut through the air. "You're suffocating me, Elijah, always searching for something that isn't there." The words were a slammed door, a concrete barrier thrown up between them. His questions, his attempt at connection, had been met with a defensive scorn that silenced him, making him doubt his own instincts, his own perception of reality. Elijah believed in confronting problems head-on, but Serafina's words had built a wall even he, the master architect, couldn't breach. Little did he know, behind that wall, a different kind of blueprint was being drawn, one designed not to build, but to dismantle. For Serafina, the fear of exposure was a suffocating weight. The carefully curated life, the respectable art career, the expectations of her conservative upbringing, all hinged on maintaining an immaculate facade. Losing Val, the source of her newfound reckless freedom, was an unthinkable prospect. In her mind, Elijah, with his steadfast presence and logical questions, had become an obstacle, a barrier to the complete self she yearned to embrace. Her belief, twisted and self-serving, was that he deserved to be removed, that his absence was the only path to her true liberation. One humid Austin night, as Serafina lay with her head on Val's shoulder, the conversation shifted from whispered dreams to radical solutions. "If he were gone," Serafina murmured, almost to herself, "we'd be truly free." Val's fingers paused their tracing patterns on Serafina's arm. Her voice, usually so sharp, dropped to a chilling calm. "Are you sure about that?" The question hung in the air, a casual proposition with devastating implications. Serafina offered no denial. Val knew a man named Jax. He operated out of a series of exclusive, high-end nightclubs, but his real business was discretion and transaction. He moved sensitive assets, facilitated hushed dealings, and had a reputation for getting things done without leaving a trace. Val met him in a secluded VIP booth, the bass thrumming distantly. The exchange was brief, transactional. Cash changed hands for a small, heavily encrypted drive and a meticulously crafted custom-made keycard. The drive contained highly sensitive architectural schematics, designs for a next-generation smart city project stolen from Elijah's top competitor. The keycard provided access to Elijah's secure office network. The assets weren't just data, they were reputation destroyers, corporate weaponry designed to dismantle a career, not just a life. The moment came on a Tuesday afternoon. Elijah was off-site, overseeing a crucial structural inspection. Serafina, her hands trembling, a cold sweat breaking on her brow, used her intimate knowledge of Elijah's habits. She knew his prized vintage convertible, meticulously cared for, had a rarely used, almost invisible compartment beneath the passenger seat. With practiced, almost surgical precision, she slid the encrypted drive and the keycard into the hidden space. Her heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic drumbeat against the silence of the garage. She wiped every surface she touched, leaving no mark of her presence, then drove back to her studio, her face a mask of serene focus, her inner world a storm. That night, an untraceable encrypted communication was sent to a specific contact within a federal agency specializing in corporate espionage. The message was terse, specific. Architect Elijah Vance, Austin, suspect in industrial theft. Review recent bids, evidence within his vehicle, vintage convertible, hidden compartment. Expect classified schematics for Project Nightingale. No fingerprints, no traceable sender, just cold, precise data. The trap was set. The trap was set, a masterpiece of deceit designed by the very hands he trusted most. Elijah Vance, the man who built structures, was about to discover what it felt like to have his entire world systematically dismantled. The call had been made, and the authorities were already closing in. The flashing lights appeared in Elijah's rearview mirror, not on some dark street, but on the sunlit highway as he drove towards a critical meeting, the final presentation for a high-stakes museum renovation in Dallas. His mind was already dissecting structural loads, light flow, historical accuracy. He wasn't speeding. He had no reason to fear. But when two federal agents, their expressions granite hard, approached his vintage convertible, the meticulous order of his world began to crack. "Mr. Vance," one stated, his voice flat, "we have reason to believe you are in possession of classified architectural data. We need to search your vehicle." Confusion, thick and disorienting, washed over Elijah. Search it for what? His pleas of innocence, his insistence on his sterling professional record, met only with cold, unyielding gazes. He watched, stunned, as they located the hidden compartment, pulling out the encrypted drive and the keycard, objects he had never seen before. The sight felt like a physical blow. The collapse of his reality was immediate and total. At the federal holding facility, the interrogation room hummed with a low, constant pressure. His desperate pleas, his detailed explanations of his integrity, were met with polite skepticism, then outright dismissiveness. He demanded to speak with Serafina, convinced she could vouch for him, clarify this impossible mistake. Her number rang unanswered, then went straight to voicemail. Later, a clipped message from her lawyer stated she was cooperating fully with the investigation, but could not speak with him. A cold dread, heavier than any concrete block, settled in his chest. The courtroom felt like a poorly designed stage. Every angle wrong, every word a deliberate distortion. Serafina Thorne, his wife, the fragile art restorer, sat on the witness stand, her voice soft, barely audible, yet her words cut like steel. She painted a picture of him as secretly involved in shady dealings, citing his intense focus on competitive analysis and a distant trip he'd taken for a project lead that, she hinted, might have been a cover. She claimed she had discovered irregularities, subtle inconsistencies in his recent professional accounts, which in her tearful testimony had forced her to come forward. Her performance was convincing, heartbreaking to the jury, and a devastating, burning betrayal to Elijah. He sat, silent, his disbelief a raw, open wound. The pronouncement sliced through the quiet courtroom. 15 years. Not a suggestion, not a possibility, but a cold, hard sentence. The word echoed, hollow, final. 15 years. The sound wasn't justice for Elijah, but the bitter, resonant clang of absolute betrayal. The architect of grand designs was led away, his world, once so carefully constructed, now just rubble. His first days in federal prison were a lesson in brute force. The cacophony of metal on concrete, the relentless, impersonal schedule, the predatory eyes of those who sensed weakness. He learned quickly: trust no one, display no emotion, show no chink in his armor. His meticulous nature, once focused on precise lines and structural integrity, twisted into a survival mechanism. He began to observe, to document, to absorb the brutal realities of his new confinement. He was no longer building structures, he was dissecting a new harsh reality, preparing for a future he couldn't yet comprehend. The architect of grand designs was now confined to 4 concrete walls, his life shattered by a lie. But even in the suffocating silence of his cell, a new, far more dangerous blueprint began to take shape. It was a design for revenge, and it would take 15 years to perfect. The years inside were a slow, grinding erosion of his former self, yet they also became the crucible of his transformation. Elijah, the architect, traded blueprints for legal texts, structural engineering for the cold logic of forensic investigation. He immersed himself in the prison library, studying corporate law, digital tracking, and the intricate web of white-collar crime. His focus narrowed to a singular purpose, his every action a calculated step towards an inevitable end. His meticulous nature, once applied to grand designs, now applied to a chilling internal project, understanding the forces that had demolished his life. The grief over his sister's passing, a quiet, stoic woman who had always believed in his integrity, intensified his resolve. He couldn't attend her funeral. The injustice of his confinement burned deeper with her absence. Then, a whisper. On a rare phone call, a former colleague from an old Austin firm, now a weary voice through static, dropped a bomb. Heard Serafina's down in Miami now, with some other woman, Val, I think. The name Val hit Elijah like a structural collapse, shaking the carefully constructed stoicism he had built. He remembered the shift in Serafina, the new, unsettling energy. Pieces began to click, forming a mosaic of cold, deliberate deception. From that moment, his confinement became an obsession. He leveraged every limited access point, every smuggled newspaper clipping, every hushed conversation with new arrivals, to piece together their new life. He discovered Serafina. Now Serafina Thorne Cruz was not just living but thriving in Miami. Her art career had soared, collaborating frequently with Valeria Cruz, whose conceptual sculptures graced major exhibitions. He found online profiles, images of their seemingly idyllic life, a sleek modern home, shared laughter, and a child, a young boy beaming in the sunlight. Further digging, fragments gleaned from obscure articles hinted at an IVF procedure. This boy, his biological son, a life built on the ruins of his own, had been deliberately concealed. The wound of betrayal deepened, transforming into a chilling certainty. Through the cracks in the information, a horrifying motive began to emerge, subtle at first, then stark. It wasn't about Serafina's immediate love for Val. It was a prior, more petty fear. Elijah recalled a brief professional mentorship he'd offered to a bright, younger female intern, a purely platonic, career-focused exchange. Serafina, in her own insecurities, had twisted it into a betrayal, a misinterpretation of fidelity. This minor incident, he realized, had provided the twisted logic, the perverse justification, for her to act on Val's chilling suggestion. It wasn't love that spurred her to destroy his life. It was a desperate, self-serving fear of her own truth being exposed by Val's relentless drive for absolute freedom. For 15 years, Elijah Vance had been stripped of everything, but in the depths of his confinement, he had built something far more dangerous than any structure. A perfect, chilling blueprint for his return. And Miami, Florida, was about to become his next final project. Elijah's release was a non-event, marked by the clang of a gate and the blinding glare of sun on asphalt. No fanfare, no welcoming arms, just a single bus ticket to Miami. His transformation was complete, beard framing a jaw hardened by years of silence. Eyes like steel, reflecting an unshakable resolve. His first act upon reaching the vibrant, humid city was a quiet, precise acquisition. Not a gun, but a heavy-duty, industrial-grade concrete coring drill, custom-fitted with a diamond-tipped bit. A tool meant for precise penetration, for breaching the toughest materials. A symbolic choice for his project. He became a ghost in Miami, stalking his former life. He observed their seemingly idyllic existence in a lavish waterfront home. Serafina Thorne Cruz, now a celebrated art dealer, and Valeria Cruz, a prominent gallery owner. He watched their routines, studied their habits, charting their comings and goings with the meticulous precision of an architect surveying a site. He was not a man consumed by hot rage. He was a man of surgical intent, every movement measured, every observation logged. The chosen moment arrived on a quiet, sun-drenched Miami afternoon. The distant echoes of children's laughter drifted from a neighboring yard. Elijah, calm, collected, approached the meticulously landscaped residence. The doorbell chimed. A pause. The door opened slowly. Serafina Thorne stood there, a delicate restoration brush still clutched in her hand, her brow furrowed in initial confusion. Recognition flickered, then horror contorted her features. She gasped, the brush slipping from her grasp, clattering to the polished tile. From behind her, Val appeared, her confident facade cracking, instinctively stepping forward to shield Serafina. Elijah didn't yell. His voice, years in the making, was low, precise, cutting through the humid air like a laser. "Did you truly believe," he began, his gaze fixed on Serafina, "you could build a new life on the ruins of mine?" His questions hung, heavy and unanswered. "Did my silence truly give you peace?" Serafina stammered apologies, her words catching in her throat. Val, her eyes wide with dawning comprehension, made a desperate attempt to intervene, a hand reaching for a nearby security panel. Before Val could complete the motion, Elijah moved, not with a shout, but with the chilling finality of fulfilling a long-term contract. The coring drill, modified for silent, precise use, hummed to life. He aimed it with the chilling accuracy of a man who understood every stress point, every point of failure. Val fell first, a single precise impact attempting to protect Serafina. Serafina's pleas turned to terrified, guttural screams as she crumpled, trying to retreat. The final, horrifying precision of his vengeance was complete. The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by the distant sounds of a Miami afternoon. Elijah Vance, the architect of a shattered life, had finally completed his ultimate demolition. But the true cost of his carefully constructed vengeance was still echoing in the empty halls. Elijah Vance didn't flee. He drove himself directly to the nearest Miami police precinct, the hum of the concrete drill, now silent, still resonating in his hands. He walked inside, his movements calm, deliberate, a man completing the final step of a long-term project. He approached the front desk. "I finished what they started," he stated, his voice flat, devoid of emotion. He laid the heavy, diamond-tipped coring drill on the counter, its cold metal glinting under the fluorescent lights. His confession was not one of remorse, but of meticulous account. He recounted the betrayal, the 15-year burden, the systematic destruction of his life. He explained his methodical journey, from the moment of Serafina's testimony to his tireless research within prison walls. There was no regret in his eyes, only a quiet, unnerving satisfaction, as if he had merely corrected an egregious structural error. He presented his truth as a logical, unavoidable conclusion. The news of the double homicide in the affluent Miami neighborhood quickly spread. The victim's adopted son, a bright-eyed boy who had only known Serafina and Val as his loving parents, was taken into the care of Val's sister, Bianca, in a quiet Florida suburb. The tragedy of innocence caught in the crossfire was stark, a quiet counterpoint to Elijah's cold resolve. A life once vibrant and filled with the promise of a future, shattered by a past it never knew. The trial that followed was swift, stark. Elijah remained stoic throughout, a figure carved from stone, just as he had been 15 years prior in that Austin courtroom. His conviction was inevitable, life without the possibility of parole. There were no tears, no pleas for mercy from him, only the quiet acceptance of a sentence he had, in his own mind, already earned. Back in a different kind of confinement, Elijah Vance now lives with a different kind of silence. No longer confused, no longer asking why. The blueprints are all complete. But the question remains, was this truly justice, or just another tragic consequence of a betrayal that shattered every foundation? The precise outcome of Elijah Vance's story forces a chilling reflection. The destructive power of secrets, of lies left to fester, is undeniable. A small deception, born of insecurity and fear, snowballed into monumental tragedy, shattering not just Elijah's life, but irrevocably scarring an innocent child and ending 2 others. It's a stark reminder that compromised foundations, whether in architecture or in trust, ultimately lead to collapse. While Elijah sought a form of justice, his actions perpetuated a cycle of violence, costing him his freedom and forever marking the innocent boy caught in the crossfire. His justice arrived too late, leaving only devastation in its wake. It forces a question. In a world where trust can be demolished and lives rebuilt on lies, how do we ever truly forgive or find peace when the very foundations of our relationships are built on quicksand? Sometimes, the true crime isn't just the final explosive act, but the insidious decay of integrity, the calculated construction of deceit that leads to it. The cost is always higher than anticipated. If this story of shattered trust and the chilling pursuit of an ultimate reckoning has haunted you, as it has us, then hit that like button, share this video, and subscribe to eWitness True Crime Stories for more narratives that expose the dark blueprints of humanity and the shocking lessons they leave behind. Because some stories aren't just told, they're built to make you rethink everything.